This video will show you how to create a crosstab with formula cells. Formula cells provide flexibility beyond what you would normally have with a standard crosstab. Consider the crosstab at the bottom of this dashboard. This crosstab breaks out the data by category and by region, east and west. What we would like to do here is to add another set of columns here, breaking out the data by year. Note that we want the breakout by year to be independent of the breakout by region. Note that we cannot simply do this by adding a date field as another level of column header. To see this, open the Crosstab editor by pressing the Edit button at the top right corner of the crosstab, and add the date field as a second level of column header beneath the region. Click on the date field to verify that the date grouping is by year. Press the Apply button to view the modified crosstab. Note that the result of this is that each region is broken out by year. Therefore, what we have done is we have created subgroups where each subgroup corresponds to a particular region, year, and category. This is not the result we want. We want the breakout by year to be independent. Let's restore the crosstab to its previous configuration. In fact, there is no way to create the result that we want using the standard crosstab editor. In such a case, we can convert the crosstab into a freehand table that provides more flexibility. To convert a crosstab into a freehand table, right-click on the crosstab and select Convert to Freehand Table. Note that this conversion is a one-way conversion. After you perform this conversion to a freehand table, you will not be able to convert the table back to a regular crosstab. The converted table appears essentially identical to the original crosstab table, although some formatting may be lost. If this occurs, you can always reapply the formats by using the buttons in the toolbar at the top, or by using the right-click Format option. Let's see how we can create the table that we have in mind. A table that contains a breakout by year that is independent of the breakout by region. Press the Edit button at the top right corner of this new freehand table. Note that this no longer opens the Crosstab editor, but instead opens the Freehand table editor. The Freehand table editor gives you a lot of control over the way that data appears in the table. For example, here we have the category field set as a grouping field and set to expand vertically. This is indicated also by the arrow symbol next to the category field, indicating that the category field will expand downward to display the different values in the category field. Likewise, the region field here is set to expand horizontally, yielding the two regions east and west side by side. For each combination of region and category, the total field is being summarized according to the aggregation method that is set in the aggregate property here, currently sum. To break out the data by date, we can add another column here. Right-click on one of the cells in the rightmost column and select Append Column. Drag the date field from the left panel into the top right cell in the new column. Note that this automatically adds the date field as a grouping field, but we should verify by pressing the Edit button that in fact the grouping level is set to year, which it is by default. Note that currently the expansion of this date grouping cell is set to vertical, which means that the different years present in the date field will expand downward. This is not what we want. We want the different years to expand to the right. Therefore, we'll switch the expansion direction from vertical to horizontal. Note that the arrow in the cell now indicates that, like the region dimension, the date dimension will also expand horizontally to the right. With the date grouping now configured, all we need to do is add the aggregate. For this example, again, we will aggregate the totals, so drag the total field from the left panel into the remaining empty cell in this freehand table. Note that because the total field is a measure, it is automatically being summarized, but you can press the Edit button to verify that the aggregation method selected is correctly set to sum, the same as the total field that we're aggregating for each region. As you can see, this freehand table is the same as the original crosstab, but with an additional set of columns where each column should be a particular year grouping. To view the results, press the green Apply button at the top right. Resize the table as desired to see the additional columns. Apply any desired formatting as you ordinarily would. This illustrates some of the flexibility that you can obtain by converting a standard crosstab table into a freehand table. Let's now look at a more advanced example. In this example, let's say that we want the user to use an input control to set a discount rate. And we want to use this discount rate to display discounted totals in the table. We could do this by starting with a crosstab and then converting it into a freehand table, as we did in the previous example. But here we'd like to illustrate that you can also create a freehand table from scratch without first creating a crosstab. Let's delete the crosstab that we have, and let's build a freehand table from scratch. To do this, drag a freehand table component into the dashboard. This automatically opens the freehand table editor. Let's initially set up a very simple table. We'll break out the data by category using row headers. To do this, drag the category field into the bottom left cell of the table schematic. As you can see, by default, because category is a string field, it's assigned to be a grouping field, and the expansion is set to be vertical. Let's set the date field as a grouping field as well by dragging it into the top right cell of the freehand table. Verify that the grouping is by year by pressing the Edit button next to the Group option and checking the Level property. Set the direction of the date field expansion to be horizontal. For each year and category group, we would like to display the total for that year and category, so from the Measures folder, drag the total field into the bottom right cell. Press the Apply button to see the basic freehand table that we've created. What we would now like to do is to insert into this freehand table a discounted total corresponding to each of the totals that we see here. So for example, for the year 2011 and the category of business, we will have the actual total and also have the discounted total, where the discount rate will be set by the user using a form element. Let's first add the form component. In this instance, we can use a spinner control, so drag the spinner component from the component panel into the dashboard. Right-click on the spinner arrows and select Properties. Rename the spinner as Discount Rate. Set the minimum to 0, the maximum to 1, and the increment to 0.1. This will allow the user to make selections of a discount rate between 0 and 100% in increments of 10%. Press OK to save the change to the spinner. Now we can use the freehand table editor to add a second measure, the discounted total. Press the Edit button in the top right corner of the freehand table and insert a row below the bottom row of the freehand table. To do this, right-click on the bottom row and select Append Row. In the bottom right-hand cell, we will add a formula that will use the value of the total for the category and year together with the discount rate to compute the discounted total. Before we do that, note that if you click on the existing total cell, the cell name was automatically assigned to be sum_total_. Let's change this cell name to be something a little bit easier to remember, such as total. Now click on the bottom right cell and select the formula option at the bottom. Press the Edit button to open the formula editor. The formula that we want to write here will compute the discounted total. This will be given as the original total minus the quantity, the total multiplied by the discount rate. To refer to the value in the total cell here, expand the cell folder and find the cell with name total. Recall that we assigned the name total to this total cell. Click on the total cell to add a reference to that cell into the formula. The discounted total is the original total minus the original total multiplied by the discount rate. To insert the discount rate into the formula, expand the parameter folder and find the name that we assigned to the spinner, which was discount rate. The syntax parameter.discountRate inserts into the formula the value that the user submits from the spinner. This simple formula should provide the discounted total, based on the value that the user enters in the spinner for the discount rate. Press OK to save the formula. Finally, because we want the discounted total to be computed on a category-by-category basis, just like the original total, we'll merge the category cell with the cell below it. Select the two cells by shift-clicking, then right-click and select Merge Cells. Press the green Apply button to save the modified freehand table, which now includes the discounted total. Note that each year and category now displays two totals. In the top, the original total, and in the bottom cell, the discounted total. To check the operation of the spinner, preview the dashboard by pressing the Preview button in the toolbar. Note that when the spinner selects a discount rate of 0, the two values for the original total and the discounted total are identical, but as the spinner changes to increase the degree of the discount, say to 30%, the discounted total is less than the original total as expected. If the discount is increased to 100%, the discounted totals are of course 0, as the full original total is being subtracted away. Let's return to the design view. To format the values in the freehand table, click on a value and format the value using either the buttons in the toolbar or using the Format dialog box as you ordinarily would. It might also be helpful to include some labeling to indicate that the top value is the original total and the bottom value is the discount total. You can also do this easily using the freehand table. Open the editor again by pressing the Edit button and insert a new column to the left of the total cells. Right-click on one of the total cells and select Insert Column. Into these cells, enter the desired labels: total and discount total. Save the changes by pressing the Apply button, and note that the labels are now inserted into the table. Of course, you may need to resize the table to make sure that all of the data is still visible. In general, when you're creating a freehand table, it's easiest to begin with a crosstab and design the crosstab as close as possible to the final result that you want, and then convert the crosstab to a freehand table and proceed to add the additional elements that you need. However, we also saw that if necessary, you can create a freehand table completely from scratch by using the freehand table component in the toolbox.